Uh, well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Uh, this was a last minute decision to do this particular meditation, so I'm going to hang out here for a little bit while people discover it. I didn't even schedule it in advance. I just looked at the clock and said, oh, and I had a cancellation earlier this morning, so I thought I would hop on here and see if anyone showed up for my little party, little online party. Oh, people are beginning to arrive. Wonderful. So, as always, when you arrive, if you would just kind of chat in, make sure you can hear me, and also let me know where you're listening from, and uh, and especially if you're brand new to anything that I've ever done. I titled the meditation this morning "Safety Now" because it's been on my mind a great deal lately. I'm planning on doing a special free live presentation with a very dear friend of mine and a very skilled hypnotherapist, as well as a martial artist and a former rock singer and a similar kind of background. And I think we're going to do it next Thursday, all on just completely dedicated to dealing with anxiety and stress and uh, establishing that inner space of safety. And it isn't the kind of thing that's achieved outwardly, and that's the big mistake. Everybody thinks that safety is some kind of the result of some kind of set of conditions that you've managed to put together. In this country, that usually means I got a lot of money. That's how I get to be safe. Uh, or if you're the government, I have a lot of weapons. None of which actually adds to the reality of safety, because it's an internal thing. It's a it's an inner state. And if it isn't discovered inwardly, it will always be subject to flux, subject to change, subject to impermanence. It'll come and go, simply because whenever we rely on conditions for our inner state is subject to the whims of the world around us, over which we have almost no control, or at least very, 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 very little. Um, so the question kind of begs itself. I mean, where is this inner state of safety? For most of us, we were never raised, brought up in any kind of culture or tradition that thought of it as being some kind of an internal state. I certainly wasn't. As a kid, matter of fact, life was quite precarious, and the religious teaching was there was no safety, right? You better be a good boy or girl, or you're in deep shit, basically. The wrath from on high was going to come down and strike you. Um, not for didn't make for much of a sense of real safety, and some of us grew up in homes that weren't safe at all. I remember, I remember as a teenager going over. There was a girl that I was dating, and I went over to her house for dinner, and it was a very Italian family, and they were all sitting around the table, and they were laughing, they were having fun, they were drinking wine. The whole family was around the table, and it was a communal, and I'd never seen anything like that. I grew up eating TV dinners in front of on a TV on a TV tray in front of the TV. It didn't talk very much about anything very very kind of estranged. Um, so that kind of environment was just like totally foreign to me, and I suspect there were many of you out there might have had a similar kind of thing. So you put in this an unsafe environment, oppressive religion, a culture that does not promote self awareness or self sufficiency, and you kind of got a recipe for an internal mess. So where does safety actually come from? How do we actually achieve it? Well, those of you who may have been have known me and my work for a long time will recognize that you don't achieve it. It's not something that you acquire. Anything you can acquire can be lost. That's a basic spiritual uh, tenet that has been around for millennia. Anything that is taken from the outside will eventually be lost. The only thing that can't be lost is that which is inherent, that which is innately you. And so the question remains, is there such a thing as inherent safety? I could say the same thing about happiness. I could say this and contentment. I could say the same thing about prosperity and abundance. I could say the same thing about any of the qualities that we seek outside ourselves. But I think at the heart of the issue is simply a sense of an ignorance of who we are. As long as I define myself as kind of this limited, struggling, little shivering little being in the middle of this this huge, cold, and indifferent universe, um, the achievement of inner security is going to be elusive at best. But it's the kind of thing that we can explore if we're willing to step out of our narrative about life, our narrative about ourselves, our narrative about the way the world works, and into a deeper sense of ourselves that is there, independent of all experience, independent of all conditions. And to do that, we're going to do a little meditation, which is why we're here. Um, Again, if you're just joining us, I haven't started into the meditation quite yet, so you haven't missed the bulk of it. I always do a little preamble, just a little rambling on while people join. And I do invite you to like and share. That's always very helpful. And and then let me remind you that as we enter into the meditation, which means the moment I say close your eyes, um, I want you to let go of all your questions and all your comments, and really let yourself be completely present with the meditation. And during the meditation, if a comment or question comes up, you can know for a fact that it is a distraction, and that if it's still there after the meditation is over, I will be hanging out here for a little bit to answer questions. So, with that said, if you would be so kind as to just close your eyes, and you'll notice there's an immediate energetic shift when you close your eyes. This is simply because our the nature of our attention is that it needs to focus on something. And visually, we receive about 80% of the information that we normally engage with. The moment you close your eyes, you have removed from your experience about 80% of the information and inputs that normally just pull our attention outward. And you notice that the attention very naturally begins to look other places for something to focus on, because that's what attention does. That's the nature of it. So if you are new to meditation, or you're finding yourself really kind of anxious or easily distracted right now, just put your attention on your breath. It's a great anchoring place to start. And consciously slow it down and deepen it. And you'll notice that even doing that once has a noticeable impact on the entire nervous system. It all begins to respond to that slowed pace. Reveals that you have way, way more authority over your inner state than you realize. And the exercise of that authority is simply where you choose to put your attention. So powerful. So just continue to do that with your breath. Just watching it. If it starts to shorten, just lengthen it again. If the mind begins to wander, just bring it back. No story, no problem. That's what minds do. Attention is a wanderer, so just bring it back. And as you feel that calmness in the body begin to emerge, expand that inner attention. It's like a soft focus or a peripheral vision, and just kind of take in the whole feeling, the whole energetic sense of the body. And notice how it continues to simply relax into this focus of attention. And notice that the body itself, without imposing on it a story or especially the anticipation of a future, feels safe, feels secure, it feels stable. And if no thought intruded itself, predicting some negative outcome or some unpleasant future, the body would simply remain calm. This is our first taste of a safety that is inherent, that is innate. It's not conditional. And notice all we did was take our attention away from our predictions about the future. It's very simple to discover, and very direct, that the natural state of the nervous system is calm, alert, but stable. It is, of course, scanning the environment for potential danger, but it's always here and now. It isn't imagining danger. It's simply, is there or is there not? If there isn't, it is calm. If there is, it begins to assess it and respond accordingly. But it's always now. And of course, 99% of the time, right now, there's nothing wrong. And notice, I'm not putting you in a trance. I haven't done anything like that. No altered state of consciousness. This is just a direct, sober looking. And that sober looking dispels the normal ideas we have that impact the nervous system and bring it out of this natural state. So safety very much is now. And we've all been very well trained to imagine untoward or negative or threatening events in the future, and that somehow it's wise to plan for some untoward eventuality. This is, of course, nonsense. The envisioning of a problem in the future creates a feeling in the present as if that event was actually happening. So while the argument, the conventional wisdom is, well, if I can anticipate it, I can avoid it and therefore be safe, in fact, creates the inner state of not being safe. So even when you are safe, you don't feel it. And this is the rampant anxiety that most people are feeling. It is imaginary. What about right now? Is there anything wrong with right now? Not even 10 minutes in the future or 5 minutes in the past. Right now. Whatever feelings happen to be running through your body, without a judgment or a story, is there anything wrong? Without any interpretation or comment or narrative, is there anything wrong with right now? So I'm going to invite you to give your nervous system permission to feel safe right now. And when you do that, the mind may very likely jump in there and start presenting with you all the things that could go wrong. Just simply assess, are they actually here and now? Or are you safe? Mind is a very useful planning tool, strategizing instrument, but it's gotten a bit out of control. Remember, the mind cannot recognize the present moment. It is only a collection of thoughts about the past or anticipations of the future. In this moment, right here, right now, the mind does not exist. Now let your attention simply be filled with this energetic sense, this field of energy that we call the body. No story, no thoughts, no narrative, no judgments, just pure, direct experience. And what do you find? And what you're finding, is it a disappointing discovery? Let this discovery, this inner reality that you're looking at directly, you didn't make it up, nothing artificial about it, it's what's really here. Give that permission to permeate, colonize your nervous system, and begin to correct the mind, to redirect the mind, to keep the attention on what is rather than on what might be. And so planning and strategy get reduced down to a manageable level. Of course, we have to plan and strategize. But let's keep it in perspective. Let this inner state guide those plans so that those plans are the fulfillment of peace and contentment and not the attempt to acquire them. Take a deep breath. Move your body. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Welcome back. Welcome back here where you never left. Take a little quick scan through the list here and say hi to everyone. Brian in Virginia. Hey to you, buddy. Mary Beth. Brian was just messaging about a private session. Well, let me put the banner up here. That's where you, that's the link right there for private sessions. Easy enough to remember, /private, gpwalsh.com. And you'll get, you register and the like, and my assistant will get a hold of you to schedule it, to put it on the calendar. Toot sweet. So good. Look forward to that, Brian. We haven't talked in a very long time. Rosario in Spain, thanks for being with us once again. You're very welcome. Namaste from Anna Maria. Hi from Liza. Julia, happy to made it today. Hey G, nice to be with you. Good video quality from Anja, and PS says, hey. So I will hang out here for a moment or two if any of you would like to make a comment or ask a question about that. These days, this issue of safety is top of mind for everyone. And I, of course, never recommend we be cavalier, take all the proper precautions, but having done that, let go of an anticipation of a scary future. It is just a habit of thought thinking that we've gotten into. And once you've taken all the precautions, there's nothing more you can do, and just be alert. And the nervous system knows how to be alert without being stressed. As long as we don't project on it all sorts of ideas and anticipations of the future, It's quite capable of very calmly going about its business while a part of it is alert. A good way of understanding that is to watch like nature shows about gazelles or wildebeests or any of the prey creatures like in Africa. You'll watch them very calmly grazing and stuff, and all of a sudden their ears will go somewhere. They'll perk up. They'll look around, smell the air a little bit, and then just completely relax and go back to what they were doing. Right? That's the natural functioning of the system. The natural state is calm, with a part of it that is constantly uh, scanning the environment for potential danger, but doing it in a completely stress-free way. The the if a danger is detected, there's a shift that takes place in the nervous system that gets ready to either run or fight, usually run. Before it does that, it's assessing, and then it's clear. If there's a danger, it acts. If there isn't, completely discharge that energy and go back into its state of calm. That is the natural functioning of all of us. The gazelles, though, don't have these minds that get obsessed with what could go wrong. And because we do, and because the nervous system can't tell the difference between what we're imagining and what's actually here, we end up creating an inner environment of stress and anxiety where there isn't any stress or anxiety. And thus, I can say it is an illusion, it is imaginary. And we simply need to learn to become aware that this is what's happening and then discipline ourselves out of that habit so that we're really clear when there's danger and when there isn't. And that allows us to be in this innate state of safety now. So we actually get to feel safe when we are, rather than being safe, but thinking something might happen in the future and we never actually get to feel safe. I think that qualifies for insane, wouldn't you? Amo. Is it necessary to realize the wisdom of no self in order to be free? As long as I assume that I am a self, it seems that suffering is constant. The self and suffering are the same thing. Um, yes, Buddha was so clear about that. Well, clear when everything's clear once you see it, right? Everything is obvious once it's obvious. Prior to that, it's not. But it is our sense of identity. It's our sense of the image we hold of ourselves that is what's creating suffering. And that image isn't really true. That's what he meant by no self. It doesn't mean that you don't exist. And he was actually accused of nihilism. And it's not at all what he meant. It meant that the image you hold of yourself isn't actually who you are. That's not a real self. It is a concept. It's an idea. It's a thought. It's not an actual entity, any more than Mickey Mouse is an actual identity. Right? Even though we can talk about him, everybody knows about him, but there's not anything there. That self-image is the same thing. There's not anybody actually there. But if I believe there is, I, the consciousness that's actually quite free, gets constricted into this belief and begins to act it out and feels as if this identity is who I am. Freedom is freedom from that. So your question, is it necessary to realize the wisdom of no self in order to be free? The answer is yes, because it's the false sense of self that is what's is what we need to be free from. So that no self means that the image you hold of yourself is not who you are. It is conditioning. It's what you were taught to believe about yourself back when you didn't have any other choice. And we all went through it. It happened to every single one of us. And the path to genuine spiritual liberation is to realize that that's not who you are, and to begin to discover who you really are, which is what these meditations are all about. So as long as I'm identified with that self, I'm going to feel suffering. I'm going to feel constrained, constricted, narrow, limited, right? I use the analogy of the whale in the swimming pool, right? Take this creature that can, travels thousands of miles a year, the entire ocean of the whole world, which is what, 2/3 of the planet, right? That's his home. And you take him and throw him in a swimming pool and you expect him to be happy, right? That's what it feels like. This infinite consciousness compressed into this little jar. So it is that sense of a separate self that suffers. So the sufferer and the suffering are one, as you said. I hope that clarifies it for you, Amo. Yasmin, your words never fail to soothe me and slow me down again. Good. So grateful to have come across your channel. Wonderful. Wonderful, Yasmin. Fantastic. Slow down. Yeah. Oh, Amo. Thank you for the donation. How do you feel about the fact that anything exists at all? Isn't that the most incredible thing? That consciousness is real, beyond profound. Yes. Yes, but again, don't misunderstand that. Nothing exists at all. It's not as abstract and arcane as a lot of people make it. It is, it's like, what do you mean nothing exists? Well, the mind makes things. Things, objects, are really objects of language. They're concepts, right? Because the mind freezes things so we abstract things so that we can talk about them, right? And it makes sense. It's a great shorthand. So I can use the word body to refer to basically 100 trillion cells, thousands of processes, hundreds of organs that are all functioning, in a unified whole. And I just sum that up by one word. But what is the body? The body is a functioning. It's not a thing, right? It's not a static thing. It is a constantly flowing function. And so when you see that, you recognize that, right, no thing actually exists. There's only this constant transformation of energy. And when we harmonize with that and recognize that it's only the mind that makes a thing, we begin to flow with that energy in all sorts of ways. We stop thinking of ourselves as this thing. I'm like this, right? Because if you are this thing, you can't grow, you can't evolve, you can't learn, right? But the very fact that you aren't a thing allows for this free flowing to happen. The same thing is especially true in relationships. You get in a relationship with somebody and you get an image in your mind of who they are, it gets fixed, and all of a sudden they start acting differently because everybody's growing and changing, and you get all perplexed. Well, where are you? Well, that you existed only for a moment. Everything is this beautiful flow. So be really clear in the understanding. Don't let these non-dual ideas remain in the mind. Really chew them over and digest them so they actually get into your heart and your body, and you begin to recognize that you yourself are a flow, which means, in reference to your last question, if you're a flow, then you don't have to think of yourself as a self that is a thing. You too are a flow. Buckminster Fuller put it beautifully. He said, I seem to be a verb, not a noun, but a verb. You're a happening, not a thing that happened. Roberto, good to have you. Practicing your meditations to overcome my fear and anxiety. Thanks a lot. Good. I'm glad you showed up because I thought of you, especially a dear friend of mine who's a martial artist, a hypnotherapist, an amazingly skillful hypnotherapist, and he's a rock singer and the like. We met and immediately had an immediate rapport. We are going to be doing a workshop next week on Thursday. I'll be sending everybody an email about it. Completely dedicated to working through the anxiety and getting into that sense of safety, especially now during the pandemic. So they'll be very, very helpful for you, I know. So make sure you're on my mailing list if you're not. If you're not, just send an email to support@gpwalsh.com. We'll get you on the list. So, Mary Ellen, I don't understand how you can lose self when you have to deal with people, situations on a daily basis. Oh, um, the self is not something that it's not like this delicate little piece of china you take down on the shelves, take off the shelf on nice occasions. It's quite robust and earthy. um, how I can lose the I can lose the self. Lose self. You're not losing self. You're losing the false sense of self. You're losing the ideas you have about yourself. Right? You're not losing you. You can't lose you. And you just have to realize that when you're dealing with people and situations on a daily basis, are you dealing with them really as you with all your full inner resources? Or are you showing up with conditioning? Are you simply responding to the reactions to people, which is our conditioning? And this is the thing we really need to learn how to see through. What's me, and what was the conditioning that I was trained into me? It's always the conditioning that struggles and gets confused and is inadequate and doesn't get things right. But as you begin to see yourself more and more as not the conditioned version of yourself, but that original innocence that was there before the conditioning occurred, you start getting access to the deep inner resources, so that, uh, as I would say, you show up in every circumstance without an agenda, which makes you completely responsive to that moment. And in that responsiveness, it calls forth from you. And so that is the self that you lose isn't really the self. It's the ideas, the limited, constricted, unhappy ideas we had about ourselves, which was never really yourself. And that's the big joy of liberation. It was never you in the first place. So you can begin to discover who you really are, which is unlimited, content, peaceful, brilliant, creative, prosperous, the whole gamut. Daryl, hey GP. So do you adhere to the notion of no doer? Um, yes, but as always, you know, a lot of these very spiritual Buddhist sayings and non-dual things have entered into the common lexicon without any real depth of understanding. That's the the advantage of having all this information on YouTube and Google is there's this glut of information on deeply spiritual subjects. The downside is there's no context. There's no teaching, right? People just kind of take it in and get very confused by it, right? What I recommend to do is to simply look for yourself, right? The idea of first, let me even put that aside. First, come to know who you actually are. Then this concept of no doer will become clear. Right? There isn't a doer, but there's clearly a doing. Buddha put it beautifully. He says there's a path, there's a walking on the path, but there's no traveler. That is, there's no, as I was saying earlier, talking to Amo, that everything is a flow. There's not a thing. So doing is really happening. And there's a sense of doership, there's a sense of doing, and that's happening too. And that's okay. There's a feeling I having right now of doing this meditation and this interaction here, right? Although I can look deeper and recognize that it's just happening. The thoughts are just flowing. You know, it was a thought that just kind of came up to start doing this. Another one that just happened like 3 minutes before before the hour. This impulse just came up. Let's do a meditation. Now, was there a doer of that? Was there a creator of that? No, it was just a spontaneous flow. So if you think of life and experience as a flow, that sense of this concrete thingness or a doer or somebody making something happen and all the stress that goes with it will begin to just fall away. And you'll find that life is a benevolent flow and that you are life, right? Life is not something you have, it's what you are. So that sense of being separate, there's me and the rest of the world, and I got to do stuff and get stuff, just kind of fades away. And you see yourself as an integral singularity, an integral unity with this natural flow of everything. So, looks like there's no more questions. So I will let this go for today. So thank you all for joining me once again. I think I'm going to do this again tomorrow. I don't have anything scheduled. Oh, I might actually. I may actually have something scheduled at 10 tomorrow. So I may be here, I may not. But again, I will be. Any of you who want to take a private session, that link is still up there. I'm going to be doing that special event focusing completely on anxiety with my good friend Kelly Fisher. And we're going to be doing that next Thursday. And I'll make sure that everybody finds out about it. If you are not on my mailing list, so I can give you all the specifics as to where to go, we'll be doing it like this. Probably, on Facebook and YouTube through the same system. So, but get on my mailing list to get your reminder. So just send an email to support@gpwalsh.com and you'll get, we'll get you put on the mailing list so you know all about it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Namaste.